Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are, and welcome to the monthly Conexxus webinar series. Today, we're very happy to have a couple of experts with us that are going to talk about how an attacker bypasses network, software, and physical controls. And those presenters are Jeffrey Vaughn with Security Innovation and Jeff Gibson from ControlScan. Next slide. Our agenda today, I'll go through a couple housekeeping items. I'll give you a chance to meet the presenters a little bit more. I'll talk a little bit about Conexxus, and we'll go through the presentation, and then we'll have questions and answers at the end. Just want to remind everybody that the webinar is being recorded, and it will be made available in approximately 7 days. You can find it under YouTube if you go to Conexxus Online subscription, or you can go to the Conexxus.org website under Resources, and you'll find the Webinars tab. If you would like a copy of the slide deck, about an hour after the webinar is concluded, you'll receive an email with a survey link. And so it's just a couple of questions, so it's not very much. So please complete the survey, and then about an hour after that, you'll get another link to the deck. We do ask that your questions be prefaced via the webinar interface. There's a little question section there. You can type your questions, and we'll be monitoring it throughout the webinar. So if it's relevant to the topic at hand, we'll try and get with, see if we can't get the speakers to briefly pause and answer the questions. Otherwise, we'll take your questions at the end. No vendor-specific questions, please. And if you do need this towards PCI continuing education credits, please contact A. Russell at Conexxus.org. If you have any questions about Conexxus or this webinar, please email info@Conexxus.org. Our host today is Allie Russell, and she's the one that if you need the PCI certificate that can help you with that. I'm Cara Gunderson, I'm your moderator. I'm the chair of the Data Security Committee for Conexxus, and for my day job, I manage the payment card operations at Citgo Petroleum. Our presenters today, as I mentioned earlier, are Jeffrey Vaughn with Security Innovation and Jeff Gibson, who is with ControlScan. So, gentlemen, welcome and thank you very much for being with us today. Jeffrey Vaughn, tell us a little bit about yourself, because we do have two Jeffs today. So, Jeffrey Vaughn.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeffrey. I'm a security engineering manager with Security Innovation. I manage a team of hackers, bright, energetic, eager individuals who love finding vulnerabilities in systems. Previous to that, this is only recently now I've been switched over to management, but prior to that, I was a security engineer. I've been doing this for about 8 to 10 years now, and yeah, I just love finding vulnerabilities in systems, and I've probably found vulnerabilities in software you're using, whether that is your payment systems and your payment software, or any of the apps that you're integrating with your loyalty providers or anything like that, or probably some cloud infrastructure you're using, whether that's AWS or Azure or any other cloud. And I also lead our IoT Center of Excellence, and like finding vulnerabilities in IoT things as well. So I'll pass it over to Jeff Gibson for his introduction as well.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Jeff Gibson, ControlScan. I've been with ControlScan, EchoSat for the last 6 years. I've been doing networking in the payment space for, I think it's roughly about 23 years now, doing engineering, sales engineering, and product management. So I oversee ControlScan's managed security services products. That includes managed firewall, MDR, and our security awareness programs, along with various other vulnerability testing services. So I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to hearing.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate that. And I would note that Jeffrey Vaughn is a white hat hacker, just as a point of clarification there.
Well, I'm certainly ethical, and I buy, I tell most people that you usually have to pay for the privilege to be hacked by me. It's not just all willy-nilly, if you will.
There we go. Thanks, guys. Next slide. Conexxus, just a little bit about Conexxus if you're not familiar. We are an independent, also nonprofit, and when we say member-driven technology organization, we mean it. So for instance, they have a very small staff, and the standards that they set are usually set by subject matter experts within the payments industry, and they're all volunteers. So like both Jeffs on the phone today are volunteers for Conexxus. I'm a volunteer. And so it's really a member-driven technology organization, which is what makes it so great and makes it work so well. And Conexxus is great about providing vision on emerging technologies, trends, and you can also find them engaged in a lot of the other payments industry organizations as well, just to make sure that the petroleum retailer is well represented. Next slide. We've had some great webinars this past year, and so just wanted to let everybody know that in September, the folks from SageNet are going to give us some lessons learned with Internet of Things API integration. We've got the Hughes Network folks in October talking about ransomware protection and how managed security service provider could help an oil and gas retailers from being the next big target. And that dovetails nicely, I think, after what Jeff and Jeffrey are going to present today. And so we've got some other great webinars coming. And then part of the survey questions that you'll get would be, what future topics would you like to see for webinars? So please let us know that, because that does enter into our content. Next slide. We do want to thank the 2020 Diamond sponsors for Conexxus, and especially since it's a nonprofit organization, member-driven. We want to, these guys are the guys that make it happen. And so we really want to thank them for their contributions, both financially and from a volunteer perspective as well. And now I'm going to turn this over to Jeffrey and Jeff. Gentlemen, thank you again, and look forward to hearing your presentation.
Yeah, good day, good morning, good afternoon. Cara usually refers to me as Jeffrey, and Jeff Gibson as Jeff. So this is Jeffrey Vaughn speaking again. And today we're going to talk about how an attacker thinks about your network to bypass software and network security controls, as well as those physical controls. And I'm really just going to walk you through some of the thought process and mindset that I have, or that a attacker would have when approaching your system. And Jeff, from his unique experience, is able to talk about, from a defensive role, how they're seeing different types of attackers approach this as well. So hopefully you get the red team and the blue team, or the attacker and the defender sort of perspective today. And we're just going to go through some of the things we think about when we're dealing with security issues. Anything else you want to add, Jeff, or we can go to the next slide? Okay.
No.
Oh, okay, I'll keep going then. So as a broad overview, this is some of the things we're going to be talking about today. When I'm approaching, attacking, let's say, a payment network or an application that's connected to a payment network, or anything in the retail petroleum space, I'm thinking about a number of areas. Now, first, from the traditional network security paradigm, when you're talking about having firewalls and having an external threat and an internal threat, and looking at your network services and the traditional network security processes, we're thinking about those. We're thinking about how we might approach that. Often, though, however, the biggest problem with payment networks that we're seeing right now is the sprawling size and number of things that are being attached to these networks. And you have situations where you might have multiple segregated networks, and you're trying to put all sorts of things on it, whether that be camera systems, analytics and reporting devices, fuel gauge and monitoring software, back office systems, your pop machines, your coffee makers, all need to be on a network somewhere, and they're somehow near or adjacent to the payment network, and never should the two collide, but sometimes they do. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Often, when I'm thinking about if your system is really hard to find vulnerabilities in, I can probably find a user who is vulnerable. And rather than hack the system, if I go about hacking the user, we can talk about how that's sometimes easier. And if I only need to compromise one account to get in versus to potentially gain me a privileged access to the network. Where I spend a lot of my time and where there's lots of room for improvement is web applications and mobile applications. This is software security. It is counter to the traditional network security approach. The traditional network approach is to not expose a service or just open up a firewall for a particular port to give access to a service. But when that service gives complete access to a database or has an API interface that I can request information for, and we'll talk about some of the more web and mobile specific vulnerabilities that I look for when doing these types of attacks. On top of that, when we look at the smaller sphere, we're talking about, one of the hardest problems to defend against is physical access to a device. Your networks and your systems are being deployed in hostile environments that you don't control 100%. And an attacker being able to add a device to a network or to compromise the Wi-Fi or plug something in or power something off and on, make it incredibly difficult to secure. If there's anything else you want to add to that one, Jeff, if not, I'll just go right into the next one.
No, I think, as we look at this, we've always looked at the context of our traditional businesses, brick and mortar, we have remote employees and iPhones and Androids and stuff. But due to the pandemic, what we would traditionally look at is my four walls of my business were the safe zone. I've locked the doors, I put in all this stuff, to secure my network and segment it. But you now have to look at it completely different or add to it going, where are your employees? There was a mad rush, we all know, move employees home. I know our company at ControlScan, we got everybody home within a week or so, operation centers and such. But, some businesses had to respond to that, but also didn't have availability of devices. Traditional employee that sat down at their desk and had a hardened box and laptop or monitored, now they got to get home. How do they go get into the office to do their business? Maybe use, I've heard stories, use your personal laptop for a while, we're going to get you one, and then there's a backup. So, the network has grown and the threats are now completely out of the control. Plug it in your laptop at your home, what else do you got on there? So it's something really to think about from what we traditionally thought as, our network or your network is now, maybe you got 50 employees. Well, now you potentially bring in 50 home networks, depending on how they're set up into your environment. And that includes the threats associated with it. So, really look at all vectors of access and security here and attack. So with that, okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the network infrastructure and what Jeffrey's seen our tests against.
Yeah, so when we're talking about the network infrastructure of your payment systems, usually you have a payment specific network, and then additionally you could have a additional segregation network for non-payment traffic, where you would apply and allow for non-PCI related traffic. And I'll hear a lot of your vendors say things like, oh, well, it's not in scope for PCI because it's not on the payment network. And the reality is that we've identified across numerous systems vulnerabilities that allow you to jump from a non-payment network to a payment network. And now you need to be considerate about the threats to the devices within that non-payment network. Further still on top of that, in addition to your non-payment sort of payment infrastructure, you might also have, guest networks for wireless. You might also have internal store networks for the cameras, the coffee makers, and all the other devices that need to be connected. And really, it's a full range of things that you need to be worried about, because the potential for jumping those networks is not incredibly difficult for a motivated attacker. I was watching a talk a couple of weeks ago about web camera or surveillance camera systems, and they were built on a shared library that, one of the problems with these cameras is being able to punch out to the internet and provide access through firewalls to mobile devices, or people who want to monitor the networks, monitor the cameras remotely. And in doing that, they were doing some clever trickery, if you will, to punch out of firewalls, punch out of VLANs, and they were doing everything over the UDP protocol. For anybody not familiar, that's just a different networking protocol that can sometimes work outside of your traditional firewall rules. And as a result of that, it left all of these camera devices vulnerable to attack. And the demonstration that was provided gave an example of how to compromise those web cameras, and then further there, pivot and attack the internal network. With the network infrastructure attacks as well, just observing traffic on the network, we see plain text traffic all the time, and that sensitive data sometimes we see might not necessarily be payment data, but it allows us to pick up maybe that store information or logging information or loyalty information, and from there we can use that information to further attack other areas of the system. We've seen that. We see weak configurations in network systems all the time, weak TLS configurations. We also see things like network services being exposed that shouldn't be, remote access for your vendors and your other console people, and it's unclear, how often that access is used or what controls that remote access. And certainly, if it's a remote access point that your vendor could use, so could an attacker with the right capabilities. So we need to make sure that those connections are secured and things like that. Those are sort of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm attacking these systems. Jeff, maybe you can tell me about some of your experiences sort of defending some of these types of attacks or hardening and securing these systems.
Yeah, as we all know, EMV, has brought on, new networking challenges. The network is growing. I did a Conexxus presentation a few years ago, and, to look back where the network began as a small, couple devices on a stored network to where it is now. We have customers with 12 VLANs, and then you have all the pumps in the back office and the IoT, and that's just at the store. And then you got headquarters, you get your remote employees, they're all coming in, you got a lot of devices. So, there's a lot of ways that we're, as service providers, security service providers, having to respond to that and identify and kind of be the consultant for some of our merchants, small IT staffs, just not able to keep up with it. We're diagnosing, going, what is this traffic? We bring on new merchant, can you give us guidance on your traffic? I don't know, what the major pump manufacturers have told us about that, but now you have these back office computers, and the rules and engagement are, traffic going between is getting very complex. Viruses can get into that network, and as Jeffrey was saying, can spread, what is going on the network. And, we're providing tools and we're providing services that kind of combat that, to, if a machine were to get infected, that one machine doesn't end up with all your machines. How do you isolate that one computer if it's seeing malware and just lock it off the network? So, paying attention to those things, logging, being able to understand what is going on within the network. There's threats everywhere, and I kind of try to reiterate it even with my own family, going, what is this on the network? Whose device is this? And reinforcing it with other family members. and friends going, you know, you're at risk. Everybody's connected to your Wi-Fi. You know, most people say there's nothing on. I don't have anything. Well, you have a computer there that you're doing all your banking on, and it's your guest Wi-Fi, and yeah, there's a threat. Somebody's bored. You know, somebody's bored. They're going to attack. It's not just an adult. You know, we saw, I think it's some Twitter accounts by a 17-year-old get hacked not too long ago. So, you know, a lot of vulnerabilities within your infrastructure, and, you know, it's to identify and just educate your merchants, or, you know, your customers, your employees, your personnel on, you know, you can't. It's very easy, you know, if you live that mindset of, you know, don't go in and panic about it, but, you know, things will happen. But it's making sure you have the right tools in place to protect. And, you know, we just kind of try to reiterate that with our merchants.
Okay. All right. How about the next one then, Jeff? Oh, and I'll add that the quickest way to like throw me off of a day or like lose a couple hours sleep is to find a new device on my network and then having to go find it. That's definitely something that sends me hunting when I see that. So when we talk about the traditional security network approach, and we talk about how we're adding more and more things to these networks, and what we're seeing is all of these things have web interfaces and APIs and customer login portals and mobile apps to manage them and web portals to access the same data. And all of those things are, you know, are software applications. And the traditional network walled garden approach to security doesn't apply to software. And this is where I spend a lot of my time, as mainly my focus is software security vulnerabilities. So when we see web applications or APIs and you think, you know, yes, I had to open up that port to access to the service and a mobile app and a user, and it's connected on the internet, and somebody can access that API to request information. Well, sometimes just by asking the right question of the API gives me the data I need. And we talk about like direct access to user data. So we've seen all kinds of mobile apps and customer login portals or various API infrastructure that hasn't done the basics in terms of security that allows me to just query the API for the information I want, and the API gives it to me. Other types of attacks we're seeing around injection-based attacks where, okay, now I'm maybe not asking it as it's intended to be asked of the API, but I'm going to ask in an indirect way or a way with a malicious payload associated to it. And as a result, I can convince the API to maybe disclose the contents of its database. And we call those like SQL injection attacks. We also look at authentication and authorization controls, where I can potentially manipulate other users. We're finding things like in your mobile apps, we're finding hard-coded credentials that give us access to the systems. Software is all the time, it's built on top of layers and layers of other pieces of software, other libraries and resources. Modern software today isn't built with just, you know, write it from scratch in mind. Everybody tries to not reinvent the wheel, which is great because you get to leverage some modern frameworks that have good security controls in place, but keeping them up to date as new vulnerabilities and keeping them fully patched, it takes a lot of energy. So we'll find companies developing software without those updated security controls in place. And we see this all the time. And those are the types of vulnerabilities we're looking for. I'll pass it over, I guess, to Jeff. Or I guess one more thing I wanted to add was, you know, there's three or more types of people watching this talk today. The first is the IT system administrator or network administrator, somebody who has to secure a network, and that network has software on it. And well, what do I know? What do I need to worry about with these software vulnerabilities? The third is a software developer, right? And somebody who's writing software that's going to be placed in some of these networks. And we're seeing issues in that area where developers aren't putting don't have the same security knowledge as they have software development knowledge. And they're introducing vulnerabilities into their code, or they're not checking for these outdated libraries and frameworks, or not checking for known vulnerabilities through whether that's static code analysis or dynamic scanning of the applications. And then the third classification of people potentially watching this talk are around people who need to consume and purchase these products. And you're buying products from a vendor. How do you know that they've built software with security in mind? And every vendor will tell you, I take security very seriously. We do all the best things and we hire all the best people. But when you start to look under the hood, how do you really trust that? So when we go and audit some of these vendors, we go in and do a full audit of their software development lifecycle. Are they building software with security in mind? And then we'll do pen tests and assessments to try and identify vulnerabilities in their systems so that they can fix them. And we try to work with them and the vendors and the customers to try and get the best outcome, which is to ship secure products and to ship secure code, which I think is what everybody wants. All right, Jeff, I'll slide it in to you to see what your defense strategies are around these types of attacks and what you're seeing from your customers.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest challenge, I come from a networking background and not a software programmer. And, it's just understanding. We have requests to open up firewall rules for, I got a web server here, I need out. But, we really don't take on the role of testing that out of the gate from a network perspective. We do have tools, and there's other vendors as well go out there and look at those vulnerability scans. PCI says you have to do an external vulnerability scan. You're supposed to be doing internal depending on your PCI level, but it's really just keeping a watchful eye and putting in tools. It's all about trust. You trust that your softwares, if you're if you're internally writing code or you're purchasing, that they're, as Jeffrey said, that things are being done properly, but things are going to happen. The hackers are going to find another way in, patching software, putting updates in. To me, it's like owning a car. Something's inevitable going to happen to your car and you're going to have to get it fixed. Inevitably, there's going to be something that's exposed on an application and it's going to have to be updated, so we kind of live by that rule nowadays, that it's a way of life on Tuesdays at the first of the month, that your machine may slow down because of a big update coming down on it from a vendor. With the move to, remote working, video conferencing, video tools have been used for several years. Now more people are using it, and why not? More exposure an application has, more interest the hackers have in trying to break into it and cause havoc on our lives. So, we encourage applying the vulnerability scanning. It's a life cycle. It's a way of life. Security. Protection. It's not about just following. PCI says you just need to worry about payments, but look at it as a business whole. You have vulnerabilities. You may have this PC and these servers that have nothing to do with payments. And if they were locked down and breached, it would cause havoc on your business. So to me, I think about expanding your environment, expanding your scanning to all devices a part of your business. Internal scans, external scans, reevaluate, look into, as we move to the cloud, look at those vendors. Who are you partnering with that's storing applications, your data, your customers' data on the cloud? What level of security is in there? What proof are they providing you that it may not be payment information? It may be some other bits of information about your customers, that it's being secured properly. And the biggest thing is about patch management. You can scan it, identify vulnerability scans. You can have agents installed that really get into the meat of, applications and knowing what level that there are. You have remote employees now. Do they have the latest Microsoft updates? How can you see that? Have visibility into it? Because those devices could potentially compromise your environment because we'll just dismiss it. We'll delay that update because I don't have time for it. You want to have visibility to ensure that all devices connecting into your business are up to date and protected as best as you can. So, with that, anything else on software, Jeff or Jeffrey, you want to add to it?
No, let's hit the next one, and we'll keep it moving.
Oh.
Yeah. So one of the hardest, well, not the hardest, I mean, there's certainly harder programs in computer science and programming, but in security, a very difficult problem to solve is how do you secure a device when you are giving your adversary physical access to it? And we see this in your cash register systems, your pumps, the network infrastructure. It's in your back office computers, your routers and firewall devices that are all in a hostile environment of a store. Now, to some constraints, you can put controls in place to limit the access to those devices in some capacity, but they're still in a hostile environment where an attacker could reasonably gain physical access to reboot the device, embed something in the device, or attach something to the network. It takes seconds to do things like pick the lock on a pump and put an embedded device inside it, sneak in through a back room door and plug in a networking device, reboot your cash register kiosk computer and attach a USB to it that automatically launches into its own version of an operating system, installs its script, and reboots again. And this is a problem that we've seen over the years in other industries as well. There's good stories around like ATM industries where thieves would go into a convenience store and completely steal the ATM completely. And they'd take it back to their garage. They would weld open the cash box, but then they would either do it themselves or ship it off to somebody else who would completely reverse engineer how the actual ATM itself worked, so that then they could go up to any other ATM, input a card that's specially designed to overload the ATM, enter a secret unlock code, and the ATM would just start spitting out money. Or you would reprogram the ATM so that rather than taking it, it thought that the $10 bill dispenser was actually the $100 bill dispenser. So when you asked to take out $10, it actually gave you 100, and other denominations of that. So that sort of, we've seen these attacks before, and we do see them in the petroleum space as well, whether that's the evolution of skimmers that are going from outside external to the device to now being internal to the device, or attaching as network sniffers with cellular capabilities so that the devices can just send the stolen credit cards out via cellular network as they please, to people embedding or attaching devices to the payment networks within the back of a store. Further to that, attacking the kiosks. Personally, I've identified vulnerabilities in some of the kiosk settings for many of the payment systems, and we've worked to address them. So really, with physical access to a device, it is very difficult to defend, and it's easy for an attacker to compromise a lot of areas of the system. I know that Jeff's been involved in a number of issues and investigations that they've looked at, and they have ways of notifying and detecting some compromises. So I wonder if you could speak to some of those experiences, Jeff.
Yeah, physical bypass, all avenues here. You look at the traditional gaining access to you know, as the picture shows there, that's actually taken, I think it was by Mark Carl, at a location that, you know, doors are open, you know, offices are small. As we all know, COVID brought on, you know, less foot traffic in the stores, so which resulted in less manpower at the location. I know my local convenience store I go to every morning, you know, there's only one person on duty now from 5 to 11 every morning. And, you know, they may be in the back, you know, doing something or stepped away to outside as I walk in the door and it's just me, you know, and it's very easy to gain access into these environments. You know, as Jeff said, you know, simple plug-in of a device, you know, who would ever know that there's a little Raspberry Pi shoved in the back of all those wires and it's sniffing the network. And, you know, as we see, you know, having tools to monitor the network and defend against, you know, if somebody were to plug in a device into that network, as it goes and tries to attack the computer, you know, you know, we encourage putting managed detection software on those devices that will combat that attack. Nobody was thinking about, well, I've locked down that firewall and I've done everything, but when the password is up on the board and the switch is right there and the PC's wide open, well, you know, it's pretty easy to inject it. Something in there within a matter of quick seconds, and there you go. You know, it could be a cellular device that's just spewing data. You know, impersonation of devices or of people coming into the location. You know, I know some people know I go to the same place every morning to get my Diet Coke, and you know, there's something new in there. They try to be innovative, and you know, all these vendors bringing in the little IoT displays, informing me of something new. But you know, when you got one person there working, you know, how do you know it's legit? He could be bringing in his buddy. One guy's legit, other one's just wearing the same shirt, and one's hacking the network and one's delivering the beer, you know, potentially. So, you know, physical access, you know, can result in a lot of things, and having the right tools in place to combat it from, you know, technology, protect those devices, harden them down, even though they're secure. You know, it's in a room, should be, not with the sliding door here, as the picture shows, but keep video. I know it's hard, you know, having hours of video information as people walk in and out, you really don't know, you know, the beard guy and his friend, you know, were those the guys or somebody else that walked in the door? Or was it Jeff that walked in because it's Diet Coke? So, you know, being able to keep a watchful eye is the biggest thing on all areas. And it's informing you, it's educating your employees, you know. I did it with my kids when they were younger. Shut the door, you know. Same with the employees, you know. Shut the door, you may be remote, you're not in the office or going into the store every day. Keep a watchful eye on that door, you know, ring them up. Hey, the door's open, because that could be your source of your breach, because somebody just left the door unlocked. You know, nobody's going to, less likely to break in your car when the door's locked than, hey, you know what, it's open, let's see what they got. So kind of how I look at physical access. So with that, you know, I kind of touched on this a minute ago, or a few minutes ago. Remote working, the new norm. You know, I think there's probably a good percentage of the people on this phone are in one of these predicaments. You know, I was enjoying our virtual Conexxus conference earlier this year. Unfortunately, we couldn't all be together. So that's me in the bottom right, if you don't know who I am. But you know what, we all talk about it, is don't bring your work life home, but you know, it has changed. You know, the people around us, you know, you are your family. You may be lucky enough to go somewhere and you can sit down maybe for a while, 6 feet apart, of course, you know, virtually remote, maybe at a coffee shop, but it is, you know, what you were traditionally doing, you know, going into the office, doing your stuff, you know, following the rules of the office, lock your computer when you get up, you know, those things have changed. You know, do I get up to go down the hallway to get my drink in the afternoons or have lunch. Do I lock my computer? No, because I don't think my dog or cat are gonna do anything with it. But it's changing that mindset. That we really have to think about that. We're at home and we're in a comfort zone, but we really need to think about who's around us. It's conference calls as we have older children that live at home. Maybe they're listening in to what you're saying, and we don't want to bring that in. Or your devices. I know Jeffrey mentioned it. Something popping up on your network. I keep a watchful eye. I design my home network like I would do any one of your C-stores. I have 5 VLANs for my IoT, my home devices, my guests, my hardened PC that I do my finances on. I carry that over into my home life because there's a lot of threats. I got Roombas and cameras and TVs. Those are all at risk, and they can pose risks to your network or to your corporate network through the device that you're using. If not set up properly. So it is really being mindful of the new norm right now as we all work from home, and protecting and educating our employees as they're remote coming into the network on what devices are they accessing the network. Do you have the hardened rules in place on the devices to gain access to the network to protect and not bridge a potential gap between devices? With that, Jeffrey, if you want to take on.
Yeah, let me add to what you're saying a little bit. With your, many of you are operating on a work issued laptop that has extra net monitoring software or malware analysis software, looking at agent detection software on it. Some of you, if you're in smaller companies, you may not. But many of you, if you're at like a larger enterprise company, you probably have a corporate issued computer with a VPN connection and other capabilities for detecting and hardening and forcing you to update and stuff like that. But many of you probably have that old Windows computer that you let your kids use that takes about half an hour to boot up, and it's got every game and free download they could find on it, and it's maybe infected with malware or anything like that. And now these things are on the same network, and the infected computer might say something like, ooh, a new toy to try to play with, right? And it's a new device on the network to try to compromise. And if you're using, let's say, like file sharing or anything with your corporate network, there's a possibility that overlaps and tries to connect. And there's certainly some really dangerous things that can go with that. With remote working, right? Like we talked about software, we talked about networking and the impacts. Like you're using all of these new software tools now, and some of them have been in the news for getting breached or having issues since COVID, and it's mainly just a symptom of them having more users and now getting more attention than they previously had. Yeah, so obviously, you can't also, if your computer's not working, you can't just, take it into the IT desk and get them to swap it out for you. The difficulties and challenges around that are a lot harder. Now you're connected to your home network and the VPN at the same time. What are the implications of that? So yeah, there's lots of areas and impacts now where, doing things securely often takes time, and it takes a maturity process, right? Writing secure software takes finding bugs in your software and fixing it over time. Building secure infrastructure means, having weaknesses and dealing with threats and addressing them by putting in security controls. With COVID, everybody's kind of rushed to further support remote working. And if your organization wasn't previously set up for that, you've rolled out a lot of additional IT infrastructure in a short amount of time that now you have to be concerned about securing, and it can be a challenge. It does take time to do things properly, and we've had to do things in a rush. So this COVID has forced a pretty strong shift in your IT policy and your IT strategy, and that until it's mature, it could leave opportunities for vulnerabilities.
Yeah, just to add to that, the network growth, as we talked about it, you have IT staff that's already, focused on maintaining and securing this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you've grown that. Your network expansion, your network edge is not just within potentially the four walls and your employees. You have maybe 2 or 3 that VPN'd into the office. Now you have a lot of people. Now your IT staff is having to, deal with troubleshooting home networks, and trying to get into the corporate network, so plus all the other devices. Well, what is this? What is this? A lot's going into it. And I think, Jeffrey, you touched on a lot of it already, but as Jeffrey said, it was a response. We had to quickly move people. A lot of companies, turned around real quick, get them remote. So spin up this VPN. It's only been used a couple of times, or, I can't, how are they going to get to that application? Turn up RDP, well, guess what? It's always been out there, but now I was talking with one of our individuals that run our director of our SOC, it's like the attackers now, they're just scanning even more. They're more heavy on the RDP. Now they've been going after the VPN. They're going even harder now because companies are just having to spin them up real quick, get customers in or get employees into the network, but going back to that software side, updating the software, upgrading the network so it's segmented properly and restricted, who gets what where, everybody's had to quickly adjust to it, and everybody's starting to catch up. We all had bumps in the road probably along the way, but it's really being mindful that if we continue to go and keep employees remote, really try to start beyond that.
When a pandemic hits, right, the first priority is keeping the business operational, keeping availability is the first concern, right? And as you've gotten through like damage control mode and you've been able to maintain business operations, now you can worry about expanding into securing it and worrying about confidentiality and integrity after keeping availability open. All right, we've got to keep moving, Jeff. So let's go on to the next slide. So with security awareness, now straight up, we are a training provider as well. We help people teach, help build secure software, teach people about security awareness, and we do all sorts of workshops in this area. And when the pandemic hit, this was the first thing that we noticed is that everybody is slashing training budgets and slashing security awareness programs. And this is something, you have, like I said, you have to maintain business operations, you have to maintain business continuity. And if you're worried about payroll, finances, or any sort of salary or compensation concerns and keeping your business operational, well, then you have to cut costs, right? And, security awareness training is something you can cut cost for a short period of time, but it'll eventually, that's a short-term savings that is going to hurt you in the longer term. And we're very concerned about some of our clients who've had to cut training completely out of their budgets, because what we're also seeing as a result of the pandemic is increased phishing and targeted attacks to work from home, remote employees, and pandemic-related phishing attacks. And these are things like, do you need government assistance? Fill out this form here. And that's an area where you would expect to fill out a lot of personal information. And those are prime examples of phishing attacks. We also have companies targeting, say, new technologies to better support remote work. And if the goal is just to get them to click on a link, I might send out a message, something like, new drug approved for treating COVID. Read the details here. And you would click on that link, or a high percentage of you would click on that link, and I would potentially convince you to download malware or something like that. So we're seeing a reduction in spending in that area. And as a result of that, and we're seeing an increased number of attacks. So the threat profile to your employees is greatly increased, and companies aren't realizing this yet. So this is something that's going to hurt potentially, and you're going to see organizations suffer massive breaches, or maybe they're in the process of dealing with them right now, and it hasn't fully come public as a result of some of these phishing campaigns or social engineering based attacks against users. So I will caution anybody that, you know, you can put off security for a moment, and the adage or old saying is, if you don't prepare your users, they're going to find out the hard way, right? And if you don't find your vulnerabilities first, the attackers will, right? So I think, you know, security as an optional spend is a pretty dangerous business strategy. It's a short-term or short-sighted strategy that can often impact the longer-term survival of your company. So I know we're on a time crunch, so I'll pass over to Jeff at this point, and you can continue on that or add to the next slide.
Yeah, just a few points on it. You know, as Jeffrey said, you know, it has been a cutback. You know, hey, there's stuff available on YouTube. We can watch this, but it's really gauging your employees' knowledge. Having a good SAT program in place that you can monitor their progress. You know, not going into the store and say, you need to watch this video, and you come back tomorrow and you ask them, oh yeah, I watched it. One person watched it, gave everybody else the cliff notes, you know, and we move on with the day. But it's really making sure, and since we are remote, you know, you don't walk in the door and see the signs over there, you know, empty your trash and, you know, lock your keyboard, little awareness videos running around. You know, it's really just continuing to reinforce, you know, security hygiene, you know, social media, clicking on things, password, emails, and protection. You know, I got the issues in there, and I think I just saw a new one yesterday, another one, you know, email, voicemail, SMS, you know, just educating. And to me, I just kind of keep on, you know, that's what I like to do, is just to enforce my family going, you need to pay attention to this stuff. You know, Mom, don't click on it. I just want to get off of it. Quit sending me stuff. Well, every time you click, don't, you know, unsubscribe. They just keep on resending it. You know what? Delete it. Get rid of it. Put it in the spam folder and be on with it. So it's really top down. This is not, you know, we see it sometimes. Well, we just need a management program, and everybody else is like, no, you're the frontline employees working on the desk or behind the counters. They need to be reminded daily on these things: physical, software, email, things of that nature. So I know we're cut on time here, you know, a lot to go into SAT and phishing programs and test your employees, you know, make sure, you know, that email from Mark Carl is really Mark Carl sending me stuff, you know, asking for my login password. So, you know, just reinforce it. So on the next one, we're wrapping up here. This was just, you know, it's kind of touched on a lot of things today, and we appreciate everybody's time. Just be aware of the big picture. You know, there's a lot of things: endpoints, servers, desktops, cloud devices, employee devices, bring your own devices, IoT in the store. You know, a lot of ways of getting into your network. A lot of things to keep up with. You know, if you can do it, or find a partner that can do it, you know, is to help protect. You know, the costs are just continually going up. You know, it's not just about payment. It's about bringing down your business as a whole. You know, your payment network may be great, but you know what? Now your email's down and you lost, everything's locked up unless you pay a nice little fine or have somebody go in there and try to reverse hack it or restore it. So, you know, a lot of risk. Just be aware of where it's all coming in. Documentation, it's beyond PCI. You know, PCI is the standard for payments, but take into account businesses as a whole and everything that comes into it. So, Jeffrey, do you have any final words?
No, I'll let you have the last one, I guess. And we want to thank everybody for coming. And if you have any questions, please type them into the chat, and we'll try to address them before the end.
Thanks, gentlemen. That was a lot of great information, and it's always hard to squeeze this all in an hour and be considerate of everybody's time. So I do have a question for Jeffrey. And when you are looking at web applications and you're doing your pen tests and things like that, it seems to me that a lot of the commonalities of the common mistakes that you see are like cross-site scripting. You see some either legacy code or some sort of code in the web application itself. What are sort of some of the other top offenses that you see when you're looking at those web applications? Because it just seems that those are the ones that and I forget which one of you said it, but it's almost backwards of your normal development. I think Jeff said that. But what are some of the top things that you are seeing when you're finding those pen tests?
Yeah, so there was on that web application slide, and I apologize, I didn't mention it directly or call it out explicitly, but there was the OWASP Top 10, and that stands for the Open Web Application Security Project. And they have a ton of great resources in terms of, it's just open source resources for developers on how to code securely in a particular language, how to test for particular types of vulnerabilities and things like that. Now, the OWASP Top 10 is one of the products they produce every 3 or 4 years, and they collect data from penetration testers and vulnerability analysis tools and things like that, and they report on the types of, and based on data breaches and how the data breaches were executed, and they look at what types of vulnerabilities were available, and based on that they come up with the top 10 list. And the idea and methodology behind it is we can't teach you about all the vulnerabilities and all at once, but if you can deal with the top 10 that have the greatest impact and the greatest risk to your organization, as well as the greatest likelihood of occurring, then you can do a good job of improving your software security practices. So among those top 10, for as long as the list has existed, the number one has been data injection or SQL injection. We also see cross-site scripting, which generally affect the web applications and the users of the web applications. Authentication and authorization issues are very common on that list. Being, does the application properly validate who I claim to be and what I have access to? Further to that, we also have security misconfigurations, misconfigured TLS, stuff like that, using libraries or components with known vulnerabilities. Those would be probably, if I was rattling off, I think I hit about 6 or 7 of the top 10 right off the bat there. And then there's some more specific ones around like XML-based attacks or deserialization attacks that we see as well, when you're passing objects between API servers and clients. Does that answer your question? I know I covered some of that.
It does. Thank you. And Jeff Gibson, I know that you had mentioned something about your SOC and some of the things that you do for your customers. What are some? Do you have like some of the top vulnerabilities that you see there? I mean, is there, like, we all know that there's Office 65 is pretty vulnerable, and there's some definitely targeted attacks there, but are there some other specific things that you're seeing that seems to be sort of towards your, the top few on your list?
It is it's the malware getting into the machines and it's infecting others. A lot of people, you start off with a basic antivirus, but it's that spread, and it's protecting that spread with the MDR services that can lock down, harden down devices in the event that it identifies something going on. Our team is automation and everything, logging, pulling logs, and that's what our SOC does in Maryland, is just keeping a watchful eye, responding, going, these are known just noise, but it's kind of hard. It is hard to block out the noise and identify, the threats. And SQL injections as I mentioned earlier, moving to VPN, the RDP, it's that remote attack. It's leveraging that phishing, so having hooks into monitoring your mail, the Gmail, the Office 365 for suspicious activity to keep from that, getting breached in there, an account, and then all of a sudden it's flooding spam out the door. That's a big one that we're seeing. So it's just all about keeping a watchful eye on it.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, thanks again. If you'd advance the slides a little bit, I think there's some resources, and we are at the top of the hour, actually 1 minute over. So I want to thank everybody for today. If please look for the survey about an hour after this webinar and fill out the survey, and then you can get a link to the deck. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great day. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks.